Hi, and welcome to the CAFMA Connect. I'm your host, Fire Chief Scott Freitag, and back with me again, Assistant Chief John Feddema.
Yep.
Cody did a good job avoiding the email chain last night and yesterday.
I think that's just something that should be addressed with him directly, maybe at a future podcast on why. I mean, I showed up just to see if he was going to show up, and he didn't show up at all.
Well, and I was wondering if anybody was going to show up, so I was tagging Chief Brad Davis, and he was trying to give me all kinds of excuses, like we have run review at 9 a.m. this morning, Chief. I'm like, that's good. We start recording at 8.
He doesn't use his skills anymore that way anyways. He would have been fine.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he would be good. It's not like he's missing anything. No. It's better for people if Brad does not touch them anymore as a medic.
Sorry, Brad.
Yeah, we don't mean to. Yes, we do. We mean to pick on him. Well, welcome back. I mean, it's been a couple of weeks since you and I were on.
Yes.
And we have a topic today that is not ambulance related.
Ooh.
Yeah, I know.
Nice.
We're just going to leave that alone. I'll just say I have to go to the Capitol this afternoon. That's why we're recording so early in the morning. It's on a Wednesday because I have to meet with lobbyists and legislative counsel to get a final draft of amendments for the bill for reform, ambulance reform. That's where I'm going.
There you go.
So that's going well.
Good.
Excellent. Good. How was your time away? A little bit of spring break.
It was good. We didn't do anything that fun, but we were working around projects and trying to finish up a few things. So
awesome.
I put the kids to work. It was good.
Good deal. Well, today, John, we have an exciting topic that we're going to discuss.
I'm pumped.
I'm not. Because it's not exciting. It's boring, and it has to do with numbers, and you know I don't like numbers.
That's true.
It makes my eyes glass over when Tharp talks.
That's whether it's numbers or not, that happens, yes.
That's true. Yeah, when Tharp starts speaking, shut down.
Yep.
Just stare at him.
That's good.
But we want to talk about where we are right now in the budget process.
Sure.
We have a wage and benefit meeting this morning, and it's Wednesday morning. We're recording again, so we have a wage and benefit meeting, and then we have a board meeting coming up the 28th where we're going to discuss some of these things, and then a budget workshop on sometime in April. I don't know the date yet, but we wanted to talk about kind of where we are. So the good news, CYFD came in with a net assessed valuation of 7.4%.
Yep.
That's good.
Yep.
The okay news is that Chino came in with a 6.8% net assessed valuation. Now, we had projected that net assessed valuation to come in a little bit higher based on growth, and it didn't. But I will say, in talking to folks around the state, we've heard from some fire districts whose net assessed valuation came in flat or actually decreased.
Yeah, which obviously, like I say, it shows for our area there still is growth. And even with it might not be as high in Chino Valley, the growth is still there, which is good.
Right.
I mean, we know we're a growing community, but it's good to see that.
Yeah. Concerning the volatility in the world right now, obviously we have the Russian-Ukraine war currently, which is impacting everything and everyone.
Yes, it is.
Fuel prices are through the roof. We're already dealing with inflation. And then we have supply chain issues, which makes inflation even worse.
Yeah.
Things more expensive. So we'll talk about that as we go on, but things to keep in mind, because our job is to look from a 30,000-foot view, look globally, and then zoom back into where we are and say, hey, these things may impact us. Whatever we do in budget development has to be sustainable for the long term.
Yeah, like I say, that should always be what we're doing. Obviously now when we zoom out, there's a lot of chaos and confusion and uncertainty.
Right.
But that's, like I say, that's always what we have to do, just to make sure, again, that what we're doing outlasts not only this year, but us in the career.
Right.
So.
Absolutely. And the last thing we want to do is do something that gets us back into those times during the recession where there were wage freezes.
Sure.
CYFD and CVFD both went through a time of wage freeze. So what are some of the challenges that we face this year? Well, let's talk about that. So workers' compensation, as we know, we have the presumptive cancer laws, and we knew that was going to have an impact on workers' compensation. The unknown was COVID.
Sure. And
COVID has definitely had an impact. In the workers' comp pool that is specifically for fire districts, we had 2 COVID fatalities, and that cost the pool about $2.5 million. Well, our annual premiums altogether are $4.8 million.
Sure.
That math doesn't work well. So what we're seeing this year is a 104% increase in workers' compensation, which equates to $564,711 roughly, an increase. Now, on top of that, we have a potential assessment June 30th or sometime right around there for workers' compensation, $375,730, which brings our total workers' comp payment increase in 1 year to $940,441.
Yeah, no, it's a huge hit, and unfortunately, it's a good thing what the pool is trying to do in terms of covering cancer and all the challenges that go along with the fire service, but that does come at a cost.
Right.
And obviously we're feeling that cost directly now, and not a whole lot we can do to control that one.
No. And it's like you said, it's good they're leaning into some of the coverage.
Sure.
We do have the presumptive cancer, but COVID was 35% of that increase.
Yeah.
So it's pretty significant. And for those out there who don't know, fire districts did not receive any funding for COVID relief. Yep. We've talked about that before. Not that we're bitter, but we are. Yes. Yeah. And there's no money being infused into our workers' comp fund. So the municipal risk pool, the municipalities were paying a fee, a TPT, tax collection fee, to the state. And the state agreed to divert those monies into the municipal risk pool to help cover the cancer presumptive. So it's an infusion of about $20 million a year into their fund. Now, those monies were already being collected. Those municipalities were already paying for it. But those municipalities that fire districts cover, like Prescott Valley, my understanding is they get a credit for that fee. So those municipalities or towns that are covered by fire districts don't have to pay into the municipal risk pool, but they also don't have to put any money towards the fire district risk pool.
Gotcha.
So we have no additional funding for that. PSPRS, this is a good news, depending on how you look at it, 3% increase. Total $882,766. If we had not gone with the certificates of participation, our increase would have been 1.5, almost 1.6 million.
Yeah. No, sometimes you make a decision, and obviously the board did a great job supporting the decision and that the certificates moving forward. But sometimes you can make a decision, you don't always see the turnaround. Obviously, we are getting to see that turnaround right now very quickly, which is nice to look back now and say, no, that was a good move to consolidate that debt.
Yeah, because it slowed the growth of the debt, controlled it. We know there's a few years where we're going to go up and then we're going to plateau. Sure. What I want to be careful of, though, is I want to make sure people understand that while this is a decrease in what we would have spent, it should not be characterized as a savings per se.
Yes.
It's just that our increase didn't go up as much as it would have otherwise.
Yes.
But it's still a hit.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't know. I'm pretty happy with where that went. But when you start adding that $882,766 to $940,441, you start seeing the net assessed valuation going away pretty quickly.
Eats it up real quick.
In the race to be number one at PRCC, and I don't mean number one like their favorite, because we're already there, really.
That's clear.
If we look at our partners. But in the race to be number one and who pays the most to PRCC, this year we shot up from number 4 to number 2.
Yeah.
16.6% increase in call volume. We had to expect it. Yeah. $167,000.
Yep, like I say, it not necessarily a badge that we want to wear, but nevertheless, it's again a cost that we don't have a whole lot of control over, because we are we're paying per call, and calls go up. It just is what it is.
Yeah, and we can see already this year we know our PRCC payment next year is going to go up again, and it may be a similar amount.
You look at whatever you said before, a 16.6% increase in call volumes.
Yeah.
From last year to this year. That's just continuing.
Oh, yeah.
And you can see it from January to February. I mean, we're looking at, with the help of Michael Freeman and collecting some of that information. we're looking at the response reliabilities continue to go down,
right?
And all that means is essentially that the engine in their assigned area, even though we're responding closest engine, but they're not responding in that area where that station is. Somebody else is, maybe because they're on another call or they're responding somewhere else. But what that does is then increase response times.
Right.
And so we're looking at all that stuff, and we're going to have to make some, again, decisions moving forward, not this year, but looking at the future on how we control some of that, especially if the response, the call volumes continue just to rise. Absolutely.
And we have to start planning for that today.
Oh, yeah.
How does that look in the future to be able to service the call volume that we have in our community? Fuel budget. I don't even know what to say.
There's nothing to say.
Yeah. We initially budgeted for $85,000, but that was before the latest price spikes.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure all of the engines are diesel.
I'm pretty sure.
They don't get miles to gallon. They get gallons to mile.
Yes.
And so even though we are under a contract for fuel, that contract increases. And so 85,000 before, I think we need to revisit that number. I don't think that's going to be enough at this point.
Sure.
We'll have to sit and talk with Dominic because there's been no conversation that I've heard on a national level about what anyone's going to do to try to start bringing in more oil to reduce the cost.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, the last thing I heard from the current president is nothing I can do.
Yeah, there's lots of talk, but no solutions at this point. So we have to make an adjustment at that point.
Right. So we're going to have to see. A good placeholder is we've submitted for a SAFER grant for 5 additional positions. Those they're not for retirements. These are brand new positions in ops.
Well, and again, it goes back to that call volume and just the engine hour utilization, how often those engines are getting utilized. But at the same time, we have a lot of other responsibilities and duties that they're responsible for, from hydrants to inspections to training that we need to kind of increase the number at this point to support the activities and the call volume going up.
Absolutely. And we have spent a ton of money in overtime related to COVID, related to other things, and it's getting more difficult to fill shifts because people are just tired.
Oh, yeah.
They're worn out. And so there will likely be some offset savings in a year or two on the overtime side. We're not going to see it this year. No. But it's not always about just saving on the overtime. It's also about your people.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like I say, I mean, there's usually going to be overtime throughout the year, just inherently, because we can't go down on staffing. We have to maintain at least 3 personnel on an engine, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's what has to be done. Right. So there's going to be overtime just because of sick leave, injuries, training, whatever it is, wildland. But there's a balance with, like you say, how often the personnel are getting used and burned out. We don't want to burn people out. Overtime is an opportunity, and that's a good thing, but at the same time, there's a balance to that. Right. And that balance comes, we don't want it to be at a personal cost to the employee, to their families, and to those activities. So part of our adjustment is looking at, okay, we need to bolster that staffing.
Exactly. So we had to allocate around $290,000 in case we get the SAFER grant in this year's budget. We can't not allocate the money and then get the SAFER grant, because at that point you're either hitting contingency, which we have to put back in the next year, so it's still a fiscal hit, or we have to turn it down. And the board will have to decide once if should we be awarded. Hopefully we will be. Yeah. I think we have a pretty good chance at it based on how we're set up and the information that we provided. Sure. So, excuse me, those are some of the bigger hits that we've seen. And obviously there's a lot more to the budget than just those things. Other areas are going up. Property and casualty insurance, we're in the second year of implementing the new wage scale. Yep. So we're still bringing people up on that. So there's a hit there. But the bottom line is the original budget, draft 1, we're now on draft 10 and a half.
Yes.
Just the base budget, just to meet our basic requirements, the projection was that we used all of the net assessed valuation numbers, and we were going to have to increase the CYFD tax rate 4 cents And Chino now has capacity
Sure.
because the rate cap has been increased.
Yep.
So we're going to have to increase them at least 2, potentially 4 as well. And just for clarity, 1 cent in CYFD is about 85,000. 1 cent in Chino is about 30. So there's a difference there, but we can bring more money in, which is good. So we all got together, senior staff, and we looked at it and we set some priorities. So a couple of things that we did. We've cut now approximately $2 million out of the budget to try to bring some of that back in line. We had proposed, Jonah, we apologize, to hire another radio tech to start shadowing and learning from Dave and Tony. And we absolutely need to start planning for retirements over there, but there's no way to fit that in this year's budget. So senior staff cut that position out. We were looking at a community relations person. If we look around the area, we are woefully behind in actually providing public education to the community. And we need somebody for that, but we cut that position out as well. So administrative-wise, we cut 2 positions that we'd planned. Then we started looking at the Station 63 remodel, which was originally budgeted at around $600,000, which was a realistic number at the time. Where are we at today, John?
We were approaching $2 million. It seemed that at least that wasn't the discussion. I know the last quote was around 1.5, but we all knew that it was continuing to climb.
Right. So what we've done is we have a plan to go through the planning process and then shelve the project until construction costs come back down. So we cut spending there, what was projected. Now, we didn't have budgeted $2 million for that. We had budgeted $800,000. So we just can't spend that kind of money.
No.
We have gone back through capital. Now, there were some capital items and infrastructure that were going to be purchased from capital reserve, some that were going to be on the tax rate. We have pared that down to if it's absolutely necessary, we will buy it. If it's not absolutely necessary, we will not buy it.
Sure. And I think that's the times that we're in right now because of the uncertainty and obviously all the other rising costs because of things we can't control.
Right.
Those were some of the things we can control. Now, obviously, there's that trickle effect we got to be careful with because just in how no different than the station. Obviously, we want good facilities. We want them to be, crews to be comfortable in those facilities. No different than the vehicles. We want them to be operating and reliable.
Right.
But obviously, we're having to look at it like, okay, let's pare it back a little bit.
Right. So we're kind of moving the entire capital plan back a year. So we're not doubling up another year. We're pushing it back. And the reality is we determined approximately for capital reserve, we need $8 to $10 million. And part of that is because the way our tax collections come in, we have 2 times a year where we have big tax collections and then we have kind of a trickling throughout. And so what we do is we borrow from our capital reserve to cover the general fund expenses, payroll, keeping the lights on. And then when we get the big tax receipts, then we put them into the capital reserve and fund that account. What we're trying to avoid doing, and what a lot of other districts do, is they take out warrants from the county, which is a loan, and based on the amount of money that we would take out in a loan to meet our expenditures, we estimated the interest to be about $350,000.
Not worth it.
No, it's not responsible spending. So we have to start building up that reserve account again, that capital reserve. It's got to be built back up. And that was all part of the plan with CYFD. We had to wean off of using capital for general fund. And then we had to get back to where we were putting money into capital. So there was a balance, and we're right at that place where we knew we would be. But now with the volatility, it makes it a little more difficult. So we have to start funding that. So with all of the cuts that we made, we brought it back down to where the rate could be closer to what it was this year. I hate to say this out loud and publicly, but we can't do that. We can't be there because I think as staff, we agree we need to tax at some amount that has to go into capital reserve. And then in addition, we've been talking to the union. They're obviously concerned about cost of living for employees and fuel prices and all of those different things.
Yep.
And there were a variety of items that we looked at, from increasing the post-employment health plan and the acting pay. And then the union was asking for a COLA of certain amounts. And so we're trying to look at those numbers and see where we can be. And that's where the board's going to have to make a tough decision, because how do you want to balance the increase in the rate, right? Is the COLA at 3% requires this much tax on the rate, which is pretty significant, 5-6 cents. But we also have to increase the rate for capital reserve. Mm-hmm. And so where is the balance in that? And that's where we continue to look at the budget to see if there's other areas where we can surgically remove while maintaining the services that both our employees and our community expect, while maintaining the ability for our folks to be able to go to training. Yeah. It seems like historically fire departments, they go right to training and cut the budget.
For sure.
And that doesn't help the future of the organization at all. No. So we're still looking at those numbers. Dave's running some more. I think we may hear from him today. I think he's on a beach in Mexico. So he's going to be coming to us live from the sand and the ocean. And hopefully he's run some additional numbers for the wage and benefit meeting. But it's a tough balance this year looking at where we at. And I sent an email, that's what I've been looking at on my computer, with some numbers to the board, to our battalion chiefs, to union executives, and to our senior staff yesterday, just kind of trying to articulate everything in one package to say, look, these aren't all the numbers, but here's how much we have coming in, here's this.
Here's reality right now. Right. And there's still going to be some hard decisions that have to be made within that reality.
Sure.
And last year we had a little more capacity to make decisions. And that's why we started that wage adjustment based on the wage study and all that kind of stuff. Last year we had more capacity. This year, definitely, there's not the same capacity that we had last year with just basic net assessed value and what we had coming in.
And workers' comp is the biggest part of that. And we need to remember that. Workers' comp, that was a huge hit.
Sure.
And so certainly there's justification for a rate adjustment based on that. And I think we all agree when we look at our employees, and we need to be competitive in the market, because we live in an area that was just ranked. Well, Prescott was just ranked in the top 10 most luxurious places to live in the country.
Wow, nice.
That helps our cost of living and housing costs up here.
Not at all, yeah.
Not at all, right. And we already have kind of a housing, I don't want to call it a crisis, but we have a housing issue for especially our newer employees.
Well, and actually, you're absolutely right. And we look at it. I mean, I have kids. Oldest is 16. Mm-hmm. I don't know where he can get a job and support even an apartment or rent somewhere. He really can't.
No.
And I have other family members that obviously. We have even with our own agents, our personnel are struggling. But at the same time, obviously, I know more intimate information from my family members. But they can't go with the jobs that you can get here. They can't afford to live here. And like you say, obviously, it's great that we have a luxurious place to live, and people are. We see the growth, we see the improvements, but it is difficult to get a job, especially as a younger employee, and be able to sustain living here.
Right.
And obviously, we can't control that, and we have to be mindful of all the things that we're dealing with in terms of wages. But it's an interesting time.
Well, and the other side of that, the other difficulty I see with it is we're densely populated, yet we're an isolated area because we're not down in the valley.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
And so as we hire, we know in the future we're going to hire more people from other areas of the state and potentially the country. And because they can't afford to live here, they may live down in the valley.
Oh yeah.
And that's an hour and a half commute, depending on where you're at.
We have folks that do it now, even.
Right.
But yeah, it's tough.
And with fuel costs, again, we don't know where they're going, and hopefully this isn't going to be sustained. Yeah. But with fuel costs, that makes it even more difficult.
You move to the valley so you can sustain a home, and then now, obviously, you can't afford to drive up.
Right.
So there's, like you say, it's a difficult time, and we have to be responsible on our end.
Yes. As far as and we have to recognize, too, that we're in competition. I can't tell you how many recent social media posts I've seen from Valley area agencies that pay a similar wage to us, or maybe a little bit higher, that are all hiring.
Oh, yeah.
Scottsdale, Chandler, Glendale, Golder Ranch, I think Northwest, Tucson, Mesa. So we're in competition for those people. How do we recruit them up to our area when they can live in the valley somewhat affordably and drive 20 or 30 minutes as opposed to an hour and a half? And we don't want to be a training ground. So we're not arguing against increasing the rate.
Sure.
We're not arguing against the concept of some level of COLA. We understand the difficulties and the challenges everybody faces, but we just have to figure out what that balance is and what politically the board can support. And that's going to take some time.
Oh, yeah.
Now, let's talk a little bit about ambulance stuff because there was some confusion.
I thought we weren't doing that.
Well, we're only talking about it based on our budget.
Oh, all right.
So there was some confusion regarding the budget numbers and the ambulance budget that we've developed. Yeah. So we developed a separate area division, our transport division for ambulances in case we get the CON. And what you see is about a $1.8 million expenditure, and you see about a $2 million revenue line item. Those numbers are based on the ARC, our Ambulance Recovery Cost reporting form for the state that we had to turn in, third-party financial person put that together. We don't tax for those dollars.
Sure.
So that division, that transport division, is not having an impact on our tax rate.
Yeah.
That only comes into play if we actually get the CON and we hire employees and we start running transports, and then the revenue side is generated by billing insurance companies, not taxpayers. Yeah. So let's be clear, both for our internal folks and our external folks, that is not part of the tax rate conversation.
Sure.
That's completely separate, doesn't come into play at all, whether we get a CON or not. Secondarily, we did purchase the ambulances this year out of capital, rescues.
Good.
Because we don't have we don't have a CON right now, so they're rescues.
Yeah. They look good too.
They do look good.
Looking rescues.
Yeah, that old Northwest rig sitting out there looks sharp. Yep. So the monies that were used to purchase those were monies that were already budgeted this year, allocated for other vehicles, pickup trucks, brush truck, technical rescue vehicle.
My truck.
Yeah. Sorry about that, Jonah.
Pipe down.
That's twice we've had to apologize to Jonah over there.
He's getting hammered, but yeah.
Yeah, and he's a good guy. We like him a lot.
He's all right.
So we've had to push those purchases off, and the reality was we couldn't order them anyways.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, that's the bottom line. We couldn't order those because
we could order them, but they weren't coming anymore.
Yeah, Ram's like, we'll take your money, but we're not giving you a truck in return for it.
Yeah.
So we're still waiting on that. So those were pushed off. So there was $800,000 out of capital that was budgeted in this current fiscal year to purchase those vehicles. We couldn't get those vehicles. We repurposed those funds already budgeted for the ambulance and the rescues, and the board gave us a not to exceed the budgeted amount that was already there. So as far as ambulances go, so far we've spent $800,000, and that's with equipment for them. So we're actually doing pretty good.
For sure.
And our legal fees really haven't been that high for our CON process. So we've done well in that regard. I know there's some other numbers out there that are kind of floating around that are not just inflated, but somebody blew them up. That's not accurate. Here's where we are.
Yeah. No, sometimes it happens in the argument, and one exaggeration leads to another.
Oh, yeah. Yep. So just for clarity, that's where that is. And the battalion chiefs have this information now because we put it out in the email.
Yeah, it's good.
So that they can be armed with it. We're visiting with folks and kind of bringing them up to speed. So that's kind of where we are on the budget right now. We don't have any information on our CON.
Sure.
It's still under substantive review. Not really any other updates on the budget until we talk with Dave this morning, Wednesday morning this week. But anything you'd add about this, that a message you would like to give to someone about what we're doing with the budget right now?
No, I think you hit it, the bulk of obviously the challenge that we're dealing with. And I think the only thing I would continue to pass along is no different than when we discussed in the labor management. Obviously, we're still having conversations.
Right.
And some of it is to bring it before the board to see, hey, here's some of our challenges. Here's what we are thinking. What do you think? And obviously, we're going to get the direction from the board in terms of what they think. Obviously, we need to bring a plan and maybe multiple plans to the board to make a discussion. But at the same time, they're going to make the final say on where we go with that. And again, a lot of challenges, but none of those challenges are going to be overcome with any kind of exaggeration or speculation on what we're trying to do. We're trying to do the best thing forward for internal and external customers. And it's obviously that's always a point of contention based on people's position. But our job is to stand in that gap and manage that internal and external movement, and that's what we'll do.
Well, and I we've been at the table sitting with labor, talking about the challenges that we face and potential opportunities, and looking at this as numbers continue to come in, and we continue to be at the table and move the conversation forward. We may not be able to do everything that they're asking for, but we certainly want to support our folks the best we can, while ensuring, as we talked about at the beginning, that it's sustainable for the organization long term. So, John, thank you for coming in this morning. I know you tried as hard as you could to get out of it.
I did.
But I appreciate you being here. And an upcoming podcast, probably in the next 3 or 4 weeks, we're going to have the new fire chief from Prescott, Holger Dura, out of Boulder, Colorado. Good. He's going to come in. We'll have a visit, get to know him a little bit more. So
that'd be good.
Until then, yes.
No, you can't close out yet.
I can't.
While I was on vacation, we'll pass on real quick. I'm going to make a shameless plug, but we did communicate with one of the speakers for the Mighty Oaks. And so we're having him and his wife come in April 13th and 14th.
Oh, awesome.
And they're going to speak out at Carter, kind of like we did with Chad and Kathy Robichaud back in 2019.
Okay.
So we're working through that. We've been in partnership with the Prescott Valley PD to kind of bring this in, but it'll be again something for the employees, spouses, both to come in at the same time, or one or the other. Doesn't really matter. You come as you are. But Kevin and his wife Rachel have a great story. I've only heard one side of it, so it'll be nice to hear the other side of it. But I know there was an arrest at one point. There was maybe some hardware thrown at Kevin at one point. Anyways, they had a very good story on how you have challenges, not only in the marriage, but even in the service. Right. But how you navigate those. Yeah. And so it'll be a good time, and be fun.
Well, we have the Partners Academy on April 9th, so that's going to be good timing. I know Chief Durr is going to come to that. Good. I'm fairly certain he's going to come April 13th and 14th.
We'll get more. Obviously, we haven't done a whole lot of information. It's just kind of developing as we've been over the last couple of days. But we'll get more information out, and I'm hoping to use Kathy and Suzanne to help put together a flyer. So just keep that in mind. But yeah, we'll get more information out. It'll be good.
No, that'll be great. I'm glad you're putting that together. That's exciting, and it's something that we need. Debbie Ritterbush and her group are starting to do ride-alongs for some of our behavioral health. I'm actually out of town next week in Moab, but it would be awesome if you could do the podcast and talk specifically about those things.
Oh, I would love to warm my heart to do this.
Oh, yeah. I know it does. You're excited. I feel the energy.
Yes. Yeah, good.
So, and speaking of support groups, for those who need it, my wife is putting together a support group for those who have to put up with me on a regular basis.
I'm in, Jen. I'm in.
I know there's a lot of folks out there that want to participate.
I need help.
So, excellent. Well, again, John, I appreciate it. Jonah, thank you so much. We're sorry about the person we're supposed to hire for you and your vehicle, but we will. I think we have a tech vehicle that we are ordering this next year because the other one you guys have should not be on the road anymore.
I agree.
It's going away. So with that, thank you so much for tuning in. Whether you're watching on YouTube or you're listening in the podcast world, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next week.
Sounds good.